Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. In today's video is just going to be a follow-on from the previous one where we discussed async await, and I built a scalable networking layer which was easily testable, and I did implement one very basic unit test which tested to make sure that we got a 200 response from our request. If you've not seen the video for that, I strongly recommend watching that before following on with this, but you're more than welcome to just carry on from this point onwards. The link to that video is going to be in the description below, and also the links to the Breaking Bad API which we're using in this particular example is going to be in the description below, and link to the starter project for this particular example is in the description as well. So the objective for today's video is to just build out the UI so that we can look at the response that we get from the request that we're making to the endpoint, and we're just going to render that UI in a table view with some cells, all using storyboards and nibs. So the first thing we're going to have to set up is a table view data source, so we'll start that now. So in our home group, I'm going to create a new group, and I'm going to call that data source. So, and create a new file, and this is going to be a new Swift file. Call that call that home view data source, like so. And then in here, we need to create a new class called home view data source, and then it's going to inherit from an S object. The reason being is because we need to access the UI table view data source. We're also going to use a table view delegate as well. So we'll start out with our delegate methods. So we need access to the height for row at, because when we set up our table view cell in our nib, we're going to use constraints, and we're going to pin them correctly so that we can take advantage of the automatic sizing dimension value that we can return in this particular method. So to do that, we just do UI. We just return UI table view and this automatic dimension. Then in here, so that's pretty much all I'm going to use for the delegate for now. And then I'm also going to have a helper which is going to set our data helper, and this is going to be called func set data, like so. And this is, we're going to pass in a character, and this is going to be character. It's going to be an array of characters, sorry, like that. And then we're going to create a var, which is going to be private, and this is going to be called characters, like so. And this is an optional, and then self dot characters equals characters. Actually, call that, put the S on the end there. So this is going to set our data, and I'll show you how we're going to call this from our view controller shortly. Now we need to set out the data source, and we need our number of rows, and then we can return our count of our characters array dot count, and then if this is nil, then we'll just return 0. And then we need to do cell for row at, and for now we just return a UI table view cell, like that. So that's pretty much our data source set up for the moment. I'm going to create a new group, and this is going to be called views. I'm going to create a new file in here, which is going to be a new Cocoa Touch class, and it's going to be a table view cell. and this is going to be called character cell. I'm going to also copy this because I'm going to need the we're going to call the nib name the same. I don't need any of that for now. And then I have a new view. Call that table view cell, like so. And then I'm going to delete this and put in a new UI table view cell, like so. Make that a little bigger. And then in here, we need to just paste in the name of our class, our custom class, which is character table view cell. And then we need a couple of UI elements here, which is one is going to be an image view, which is going to be like the character's avatar. And then I'm going to set this to 70 width and 70 high. And centralize this. And this is going to have the lead in. We're going to give it a fixed width and height. Not worried about image ratio, aspect ratio, it's just an avatar. And then for positioning, I'm going to center it vertically in the container. Then I'm going to need a label. And that's going to start there. Then I'm going to pin it to give it some horizontal spacing between the lead inside of the label and the trailing of the image view. I'm going to drag this out so that it takes the full width of the cell, and then I'm going to pin the trailing to the trailing of the cell, and then so that we can get our automatic sizing, I'm just going to pin this to top and bottom, and then all our errors go away. Then finally, if we've got a long name for a particular character on smaller devices, then we want the text to wrap. So I'm going to set the number of lines to 0. And that is pretty much our cell complete in regards to setting up the nib. Now, I need to set up the IB outlets now. But first, I'm going to create a static property called reuse identifier, like that, and this is going to be a type string, and we're just going to call it the same name as our cell. So now we're going to create some outlets, maybe outlets like that, and then we're just going to have 2 in this instance. So one is going to be our character image view like that, and then our character name. Oops, like that. So finally I'll just give the image view a background color system 5, just random, doesn't have to be anything in particular. And then we're going to make our character avatar circular. So I'm going to have a couple of an override, at least one for now, which is going to be awake from nib, and then call super.awake from nib, like that. And this is going to handle. Let's close this off now. Don't need that for now. So here we are going to do the corner radius of the image view. So we character image view dot layer dot corner radius. So we know we've got a fixed height of 70. So if we do 70 divided by 2, that make it nice and circular. And then if we do character dot image view dot layer, because we're manipulating the layer via the corner radius, and it can be very expensive doing the drawing when you're scrolling fast. So we're going to add some rasterization to this so that it's not as expensive. So the scale, so that we don't get anything blurry, we're going to do UI screen.main.scale. So it takes the scale of the device, so whether it's like an at3x or at 2x. So that handled the scale, and then we need to just tell the cell that we want to use rasterization. So we'll do set should rasterize true, and that's all the overrides done. Now we need to have our helper, like so. And then we are going to call this func populate, and this is going to take a character like that, character, and then for now we're just going to do character name dot text equals character dot name, and that is going to be optional because we're going to pass in an optional value from our cell for row at. Then in here we can start building out our cell for row at data source method. So first of all we need to get our character from the array. So to do that we'll do let character, then do characters, and then because it's an array and the index path.row is an integer, we can actually pull the character we want from the characters array using index path.row. Now we need to set up our cell. So it's let cell equals table view dot dequeue cell, and now we're going to use our identifier that we set. So we have a character table view cell dot we use identifier, and the reason I do it in the cell class is because in the future if you ever needed to change it, rather than having to do it and this could be potentially, this cell could be used through multiple view controllers or multiple table views, and rather than having to, if you put a string here, if you put the string as a string value, like a raw string value, so like that for example, you'd have to change it everywhere where you're using that particular value. But if you do it in the cell itself, you just have to change it in one place, and it just makes it easier to maintain. So we've got our cell. We also need to cast this now to character table view cell, and then that gives us the ability to access our populate function that we've created and pass in our character. And that's pretty much all we need to do for now in the data source. We're going to be adding a did select and stuff like that. So that's that done. Now we're going to head on over to our view controller, and we're going to have another function called register cell, like that, and then we're going to access our nib. So we have a let nib UI nib, and then we're going to need this initializer, no, not that one, sorry, nib name. And then because we've called our table view cell the same as our nib name, we can use the reuse identifier and then set that to nil and close the bracket off. Then here we need to do table view dot register cell, pass in our nib that we've just created on line 25, and then again same again for our reuse identifier is going to be that, and then we need to call it from view did load. I mean, you can put this in view did load, but I try my very best to try and keep view did loads as function calls if I can. If there's anything super special that needs to happen, that, well, I mean, really you can call it. It should just all be done via function calls, but that's my opinion. So up here we're going to need to create some new property. Like that, and this is going to be a private one, private let view model, like that, and then you're going to go home view model, like so, and then we do a private let data source, like that, and this is going to be home view data source, like so. And then in here we need to set the table views data source dot data source equals data source, and then table view dot delegate, because we're using delegate methods in that class, data source. So then our view model, we need to do output dot self. So if you remember, output is our we'll just go and check that out quickly. Output is our protocol that when we get a success or a failure from our API, then they will trigger one of these functions here, depending on the result of the request. So this is complaining because we're not actually conforming to the to the output itself. So I'm going to create at the bottom of this view controller class, I'm going to create an extension now, just to keep this separate. And this is called a home view model output. And then shortly this will complain, and we will be able to just fix that quickly by clicking that fix button, and that gives us the two methods that we want. So in here you would probably want to create some sort of alert view, so we'll do that. UI alert, let alert, UI alert controller. Title is going to be error. Whoops, can't spell error. And then we're going to use the error.message error, the localized description from the error parameter. And our preferred style is going to be alert, and then we need to have a way of dismissing that. So now we'll create a alert.action or add action, and then we'll have a UI alert action. We can just call this OK so that we can dismiss it, and this is just going to be the default one. And then finally we need to present the alert animated true, and that is pretty much everything we need. One thing I want to change in the view model from the previous one is I'm passing the localized description. If I pass in the custom message, which was a string variable that has our own custom messages, then we will get something more user friendly rather than the normal localized description that you would get. So that's that done. Then in here, when we get the content received, we want to call our data source and then call set data and pass in our model like that. And then finally we'll reload the table view, reload data. So if I've finally, yeah, set up main like that. So we're calling our setup main with all our, where we set our data source and our view model output. So if I build and run, fingers crossed, it doesn't build. Right, so let's check that out. What have I forgot? Ah, yes, that was silly. So build succeeded. Oh yeah, it also helps if you call view model dot fetch characters, because it wasn't actually the callback. This is not getting executed because we're not asking to make the request. It was very important as well. So we're making the request. DQ, so we crashed. There you go, cool. Okay, so the reason why that was crashing was because the reload data obviously needs to be done on the main thread, and our fetch characters is the task is on a background thread. So I've had to introduce the MainActor to fix that. Another alternative would have been to do this dispatch queue.main.async and then pasted self.tableview. Whoops, self.tableview, get rid of that. And then if you were to build and run, it should run. There you go, and it does. So that's why that crashed, was because we're trying to do the table view stuff on a background thread, or reloaded the data, sorry, on a background thread. So to get around that, you can just use the MainActor. So MainActor works as a thread safe type. Is thread safe, and it saves you having to use the dispatch queue everywhere where you would need to present, do some UI related stuff. There's some great articles about MainActor on Apple's developer portal, and there's stuff to do with WWDC. I strongly advise people to go and check that out. And I'll probably do a more in-depth tutorial, maybe following on from this, about actors and main actors. But yeah, that's why that crashed. And that would be the same for this as well. So when we call request fail, because we're actually presenting the alert on the view controller, that would have caused the same problem. So yeah, that solves our issue there. So one other thing I want to add to the table view cell is a accessory type, and it's going to be a detailed disclosure one. And also one other thing I want to do is embed this into a navigation controller, so that we can do a detail as well, because I'm going to do another GET request so that I can explain how to use endpoints where you're having to pass parameters into the path. So if you remember if we go to service, our character service, we have get all characters, but that's just a simple request where we just pass in the character's path. But there's going to be times where you need to pass in parameters, like in a get request. So I'm going to show you in a detail view how we go about doing that. So as you can see, our characters are, let's just rebuild that, make sure our navigation controller is all set up, which it should be. Yeah, looking good. Just give the navigation view a title. So this would be navigation item dot title equals, call that Breaking Bad, like so. Build and run, make sure that that's shown up. Cool. So yeah, as you can see, we've got that. We need to handle our deselection and stuff like that. But now let's just hook up another view controller that we can go to. So in our main.storyboard, we're going to drag out another view controller, like so. And we're just going to connect this up like that. Show. Cool. And then on the nav bar tint color, we want that to be like label. Label color, that one there. Build one. So that's that done, and then we'll create another view controller, another group where we're going to do all our view controller related stuff, and this just call that detail for now. Create a new file, UI Coca Touch class, and this is going to be UI view controller. And this is going to be called character detail view controller. Grab that because I'm going to need that. Here, here, pass that like that, and then in this we're going to name this segue as well. So yeah, we want to give this segue a particular name. This could go to character detail. I'm going to copy that because we're going to store that in a constant in our home view controller. So private let segue ID like that. So so basically what I've done there is created a segue identifier. I'm storing that locally in this private constant, and then we're going to use that so that we can segue and pass data between the view controller. So now in my data source, I need to add another delegate, which is going to be did select row at, and to stop this from happening, where it stays selected, we need to do table view dot deselect row at, passing the index path, and set the animated to true. But also how we're going to pass the data back to our view controller is via a delegate. So I'm going to create a protocol, and this is going to be called home view UI delegate, something like that. It doesn't really matter what you call it, as long as it's relevant to you. This is going to conform to any object, and then we're going to have a function in here called push view controller with passed data, like that. And then we're going to pass along a character. Character, it's optional. So then where our properties are here, like that, we're going to have a private weak var. Oh no, it's not going to be private because I need to access that from the view controller. So, but it's free weak var view delegate, and then it's going to be of type home view UI delegate. And then in our did select, we're going to have our view delegate dot push view controller and pass our character along. Whoops. We need to get to our character. So that's going to be let character equals our characters array, and then index path dot row, and then pass our character through the to the delegate method, and that will just notify our view controller, and then we'll just push the view controller onto the nav stack, our detail view controller onto the nav stack, and pass the data along as well. It's looking good. So create another extension here, dot view controller, and then I need to do home UI delegate. Well, and also in the data source dot view delegate equals self. So that's saying that we need to start listening to this this particular method here, or when this delegate's triggered, we need to then call this. Yeah. So here I need to do self dot perform segue with identifier and pass in our segue ID like that, and then here is going to be our character object that gets passed along. Then to show that it's actually getting passed along, I'm going to do navigation item.title. Also need to create a reference to our character, like so, this character, and then we're going to have character dot name, like that. And to cheat, I'm going to steal this block of code here and put it in our view controller just here, like that. Get rid of that comment and that comment and get rid of that. So now this will get called because we're asking to perform the segue. This will get called, and then we can unwrap our destination and also unwrap the sender, which should be, we need to cast it as well. So we do something like if let dest equals segue dot destination as, so we're going to cast it and make sure it's not nil. This will be detail or character detail view controller. Then we need to have our model is sender as character, so we're going to cast and make sure that it's not nil, but cast our sender to make sure it's of type character, and just make sure our segue destination is of type character detail view controller. So if that all passes, we need to say destination dot character equals model. Actually, I'm going to change that to character, like that, like so. So now if we build and run, I think everything's fine, and we pick one of our characters, Skylar White, and then scroll down here, yeah, that guy there. And the reason that's happening is because I think I set the navbar tint to a weird color. Yeah, I did. Label color, that just needs to be default. Did that by mistake. That's better. Yeah, so as you can see, we can pick anyone, Skinny Pete, No Doze, and it changes the name of the character. So that's pretty much it. So we're making a request, we're updating the UI, and the only outstanding thing we've got left to do is build a extension that will handle our show our avatar. So let's do that now. So I'm going to create a new group, and this is going to be called extension, like that. Create a new file, and it's going to be a new Swift file. And in here we're going to call this UI image view plus extension. Like I say, you can, if you don't want to do this part, you can just use SD web image, go and get the package and install it. But I'm going to have a go at building an image we can cache the image and then use async await to go and fetch the image. So UI kit, because we need to use UI image and UI image view. So this is going to be an extension of UI image view, like that. And also the first thing we need to do is set up our cache. So this is going to be called image cache, and we're going to have use ns cache, and we're going to have an ns string and a UI image. So it kind of acts like a dictionary. So we're going to create a method called func load image using cache, like that. And we're going to have passing two parameters here. One is with URL. I need to initialize that. Oops. Let's stop that from moaning. So this is going to be a string. So this is going to be our resource URL that we're going to pass in, and then we're going to have an indicator color because we want an activity indicator. We could just use white, but if you wanted to use it elsewhere, you could move the extension elsewhere. Indicator color, like that, and then this is going to be UI color, and we'll provide a default value of white if nothing's passed in. So that's our function. Oh, we need to also make this async, like that. And then, so first of all, we need to get our let URL equals URL, and then a string, very similar to what we did in the previous video. Make this URL string, like so. And then do URL string, and then we're going to add create a request. Now you don't necessarily need it for this example, but there may be times where you would need to pass a token along in a header of the request if you're communicating with your server. If your images are stored on your server in a protected environment, you may have restrictions on what people can and can't see, and the only way they can access that particular image is through a JWT. So you could use a request to pass in the JWT or like an API token via the request header. So, but like I say, I'm not going to use it here, but I'm just creating it in this so that you could, if you wanted to use this code elsewhere, you could. And like I said in the previous one, if your URL is wrong, you want to know why it's wrong. So you need to, crash, just force unwrap it and crash it if it's no good. So first of all, we need to clear out any previous images. So that's nil. And then we're going to check to see if we have a cached image. Cached image, like so, and then we're going to have image cache, like that, and then do object for key, and we're going to pass in our URL string as ns string, like that. So we're basically, oops, put the bracket in the wrong place. So we're basically checking to see if we have the cached image. That needs to be let because that can be nil. So we're going to say, have we got an image already? If not, then we'll continue. But if we have, then we will just do self.image and pass back the cached image, and then just return from here. So the async bit isn't really used in this instance here, but this is where we will this is where we use it now, but we're going to create an activity indicator first. Activity indicator, and that's going to be a UI type, UI activity indicator view, and we're going to create the frame like that, and it's going to be CG rect. And we're going to pass in these values here. It's going to be frame dot size, size dot width divided by 2, and then frame dot size dot width divided by 2. Actually, no, that's going to be height, isn't it? Yeah. And then 0 and 0. Then we need to add this to the subview, add subview activity indicator, and then we need to set the color, activity indicator.color equals indicator color, like that, and then activity indicator.start animating, so that it will start spinning when we need to, when we're fetching the images. Now here we need to create a do and a catch, and then we just need to do image equals nil, and then just return. and also we need to remove the activity indicator. So if we can't, we're going to do a try in a minute, but if we can't dot remove from superview, but if we can't fetch an image, or the try fails, for example, then we are going to have to remove the super view and just return an empty image. So you could have a placeholder, or in this instance we've got the grey colour, but you could have a placeholder image, like similar to what Facebook does, or Instagram, or WhatsApp, or something like that. So we need to get our we're going to do our async await stuff now. So do let data let data, and we're going to also have a response like that, and then this is going to be equals try dot await, and then we'll have URL session dot shared dot data task data we're looking for the throws. That one there. And then we are going to pass in the request, and then we need to check our response. So guard let response equals response as HTTP URL response, and then if we're going to do our image nil, and then just return like that, and then yeah, that's fine. Oh, we need that else there. So now we've unwrapped our response. We've got like a 200 or whatever like that, and then we need to do similar to what we did before. So it's going to be switch response dot status code, and then in here we do a case 200 dot 299, and then we'll do our if let image equals UI image. We'll try and cast our data to an image view, or an UI image, sorry, data like that, open close, and then we'll do self.image, and now self.image equals image. So basically we're checking to see if it's 200, between 200 and 299. It is. Then we are trying to unwrap our data that we get back from here, from our await call. If we can unwrap the data, then we'll set the image to but we'll also store it in the cache. So image cache dot set object for key. This is going to be an image, and then our key is going to be URL string, which is what we passed in earlier on, and then we'll just return. Then we do a case for and then we can just do a default, because we're not worried about the other scenarios. We would just pass we would just use the placeholder. So we'll do image equals nil, and then return. And that needs to be fixed like that. Yeah, because we're using an inner string. Excuse me. So that is pretty much it. So a quick run through of what we're doing. We're passing in a URL string. We're setting the indicator color in case you want to, different background or whatever. We have a URL. We try and convert our URL string to a URL, and then we add it into a request. The reason I'm doing this is because you may want to add a token to stop to access particular images. Then we flush our image to make sure there's nothing stale, and then we check to see if we already have the image based on the URL that we're passing in the cache. If we do, then we just return the cached image. If we don't, we continue from here. And we set our activity indicator and so that it spins while we're fetching. And then once we have, then we enter this do catch and we do our await with our request. Try and unwrap the response. If we can't, then we'll just return the placeholder and we will just set the placeholder. In our instance here, it's just this grey background. If this passes our guard, then we look at the status code and then we check between a 200 and 299. Then we change the add our data that we get back from here and try and make it into a UI image. If that's successful, we set the image and we also store the image in the cache. So now in our character table view cell, we need to do character image view dot load. First of all, we need to create a task. So we do a task like that and do character image view dot load using that. We're not worried about the indicator for now because we've got the grey background, but you could change the color if you wanted to. And here we're going to do character name dot image because that's the string that we get back from the service, our Breaking Bad API, with the URL to that particular character's icon. And we'll just pass in a default empty string for now. And then hopefully if we build and run, that probably, it needs the await keyword, of course. So now if we build and run, we should be able to see our images. And we still have our activity indicator. So there's a small bug there, and I know what that is straight away. That is because I'm not removing the activity indicator. So if we do activity indicator.remove from superview and then rebuild, that will get rid of that. There you go. As you scroll in, they're just popping in and now they're being read from the cache. You won't make another network request. So that's pretty much it. I'm just going to tidy it up by in our nib here. I'll just set this image view to be aspect fill, for example. You could scale them accordingly, but for speed, I'm just going to set it to aspect fill, and there you go. You get the character. You can drill down into it, and away you go. So that's pretty much it for today's video. All this code will be on my GitHub repository, so you can go through and look at it, clone it, tweak it, add comments, put comments in the description below if you think we could do something better. We'll get it looked at. But that's pretty much it for today's video. In the next video, I'm going to probably cover how we get that data into the detail view, and also make an additional request. There is an option where we can get there is an endpoint where we can get some of the quotes from the Breaking Bad series, and we can render them, but they're using an ID, so that would be out. That way I can show you how to use the networking layer by fetching, doing a get request with and passing a particular ID. Yeah, so if you are enjoying the videos, don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you've got any feedback, comments, or ways you think that you could do stuff better, then please feel free to leave a comment. Always open to listen to other people's opinions and stuff like that, and maybe we can review what we've done so far and implement something that you have come across in the past that may be better than what I've done so far. But yeah, one of the things I'm going to be covering is database stuff in the future, but that's going to be after this video. We may even use it in this video. So yeah, let's see how it goes. But I hope you're having a wonderful weekend and enjoying the sunshine. But yeah, so like I say, don't forget to like and subscribe. It is really much appreciated, and I will see you in the next video. Bye for now.